drainage land and all that kind of thing. We do all bring a little expertise, and in this first of our series, April and I will be talking about largely, generally about stewardship, land stewardship. But in subsequent sessions, we're going to bring in experts in fields such as invasive species management, wetland policy, and other things, forestry, and these kinds of things. But the idea is every month to have a new topic. And so this is the kickoff. So we're going to lay a little bit of foundation conceptually and sort of join together as a group to think about what we're all doing. I would like to, sorry, I'm Robin Sears. I'm the director of Williamstown Rural Lands. And I've been here for 9 months. And I'm a Massachusetts girl, not quite as local as April, who's been here for a long, long time, all his life, basically. But speaking of longevity, I would just like to acknowledge that we are thinking and learning and practicing on the lands of the Stockbridge-Munsee, the ancestral homelands of the Mohican people who are indigenous to this land. Despite tremendous hardship in being forced from here some time ago, today their community resides in Wisconsin and is known as the Stockbridge-Munsee Community. We pay honor and respect to their ancestors, past and present, as we commit to building a more inclusive and equitable space for all. We will also provide a link to their website so you can learn more about the tribe. And Dana points out there's a very cool section on their website for learning the languages of both Munsee and Mohican. So maybe you can check that out. We, as an organization, are dedicated to conserving land and as well engaging the public and educating the public on land conservation, nature appreciation, land management, and all of these great things. And we love our work. I would like to introduce April Cook, who is joining to co-facilitate this discussion. April is a lifelong resident of Williamstown. He's a forester, farmer, a fixer of all things, and a really super engaged member and board member of Williamstown Rural Lands. And we appreciate very much his interest in all that we do, and your instigation of the Working Hands, Working Lands series, where we're promoting the appreciation of our working landscapes, forested or agriculture or what have you. And you have a lot of forestry experience locally and abroad, which is wonderful that you bring. So welcome, April.
Thank you.
What else? Dana, am I missing anything to kick it off?
I think that covers everything.
All right. Here comes Juliet in the room there. So we don't have a formal presentation tonight, but rather we have topics, and really I would very much like it to have a discussion and sort of set the scene for, I hope, your participation in subsequent sessions. We will be having not only talks on the Hill, we call these, but also walks and site visits. We hope to get out and see things. Let's see. Again, the objective of this, well, the objective of this series is to provide you with a framework for thinking about land conservation, or not land conservation, land stewardship. And we'll get into a discussion of what is land stewardship, what does that entail? And the outcomes of each session and the outcomes of the series, we hope, is that you will feel empowered with information, resources, a space for thinking and planning, empowered to do land management or land stewardship, or to take action on moving towards doing some stewardship yourself. And I hope we will too. Dan and I are trying to think about how rural lands can perhaps actively manage our properties. We have about 1,000 acres of property around. And we don't do much management other than very good trail stewardship. But we're thinking about what needs to be done and how we might do that. So before we go any further, shall we introduce each other? I'd love to hear from each of you who you are, maybe why you're here, what's interesting to you about this series, and how much acreage do you have? And we'll get in later too. I'd like to hear about your objectives for management. Who would like to start? Janice, maybe? Not to shock you, but Janice, would you be able to be able to kick us off and sharing your name and where you live and what's your interest and what's your acreage?
Yeah, so I'm my husband Ross and I are new to Williamstown. We moved here end of August, and we are off of Hancock Road, and we have 22 acres, and we are trying to get the lay of the land, figure things out. Have about half of it's woods and half of it's field, and yeah, we're really on a learning curve to figure this all out, having come from the suburbs. So.
Right. Okay. Thanks. Hugh, how about you?
Yeah, sure. Fairly similar situation to Julia. I've been here with my wife Diane. We bought a house here 2 and a bit years ago, up the hill above Sand Springs, if anyone is familiar with that little lane that goes up the hill. So we have about 8 acres more or less, and there's a spring that runs onto it, so it's very marshy, and also it's very overgrown with bittersweet and honeysuckle and barberry, and so it's not in a like nice and tidy state, but it has some hardwoods and some willows, some very large willows that are on their last legs. I think that are 100 years old or so. I mean, the house was built in 1913, so and some large pines. Anyway, so yeah, I landed here, and we have this amazing slice of hillside, which is like wonderful and unexpected, and I don't know really what I should be doing there.
Okay.
So
Wonderful.
yeah, I'm here to learn.
Yeah, good. Who's next?
Dan?
My name is Dan Gura, and I'm the Lands and Trails Coordinator at Rural Lands, which is a long way of saying I'm the land steward. I've been in Williamstown for about 16 years. I've got 0.7 acres of suburban lawn with a red maple tree and about 5 evergreens. And I'm here to learn about and help facilitate learning about stewardship, and maybe I'll pick up some tips of how to change my lawn into something more interesting. Too.
Good. I'm April Cook. I've been along. My parents came back here in the 30s. My mother was a farmer. My father was an industrialist, and I carried on the tradition of farming and forestry. I am a forester, have been a forester here and overseas in many aspects. I am passionate about my forests. I even go out and prune the saplings when I have spare time. So I'm very proud of the fact that my 200-acre forest has yielded about $1.5 million over 50 years. And I continue to be passionate about it. It's not for everybody, but I certainly can share my story with you on what intrigues me and stimulates me about working the landscape. So I look forward to talking to one and everyone here.
All right, thank you.
We're going around the table.
Okay.
We are, yeah.
Carolyn.
You're next.
Right on. Yeah, got that. My name's Brian Carpenter. My partner and I bought property here off of Belden Street in 2014. We have a plot that's just a little bit bigger than the size of this room, so
Oh,
not a lot of stewardship or management that's required. But we do back up against the woods behind the Woodlawn Cemetery. So we're always talking about stewardship when we see things come down in the woods there. And so I'm interested in just learning more about the concept and what's going on around town and how we might be helpful.
Wonderful.
I'm Jerry O'Neill,
Yes.
next to Haverhill. I'm probably the longest resident sitting here. Because I started my orthodontic practice in 1975,
Oh, my gosh.
and we lived at the bottom of Stratton Road. We've always lived on Stratton Road. So when we got here, they were building these condos about halfway up Stratton. Stratton's from Adams Road to where I am, it's 1 mile exactly. And it was a farmland, and Dan Galusha was very upset when Bill Grandy figured out who owned that land. The little lady in Indiana,
Oh, my gosh.
and he bought it all.
Oh, my gosh.
And he was a developer, kind of infamous, but pretty savvy business guy. And we became, anyway, so we were the second people to buy a parcel, and we were the second house on the right-hand side as you go up and you get onto dirt. It was another dentist and me, and we have 8.5 acres. He had 12 and he was in the woods. But it's a really nice area right there. You're up high, and then just to the other side of us is a state-owned piece of land that the Chennai farm people have been, I don't know, what do you think, 60 years maybe, something like that, farming it. And it's beautiful, and several planes have crashed into it. It's a beautiful spot. So, and my second love was I would like to be a farmer.
Oh.
So I grew up around Hadley and Northampton and around UMass, and so I used to work on a farm at the Allard Farm, huge thing, and so I got used to driving around on tractors and stuff. So little by little, I got all the implements, and my backyard is a slope, and it's probably 5.5 acres, and we hay it. And I did it with my own tractor, my own hay buying, my own bale, rake, balers, everything. And after a while, it got a little too much. So now I'm letting Jay Galusha do it, and he just does it as a favor to me. But the conservatorship is what I'm interested in. That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
Because right now we get a rebatement on our property tax. Because it's at that particular section. So of the 8.5, I don't know, maybe 3 are taxed.
Yeah, is that through the 61, chapter 61?
I think so. I don't,
61A.
I don't, yeah,
Yeah,
Brian,
yeah.
Brian told me it was something like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, but I don't know much about it, so that's why I'm here.
All right.
Good.
All right.
Totally.
Super.
Yeah. Good news is I think you can get an APR on down to 5 acres if you wanted to put it into permanent protection.
Well, that's where I want to head, because eventually, and I don't know, I'm 75 years old, so I don't know how long I'll stay here, but probably 5 more.
Okay, all right. Carolyn and Juliet, would you like to introduce yourselves? You don't have to, but we would love to meet you.
Sure, I'll do it.
Okay.
I'm Carolyn Bear. I've lived here since 1981, 41 years. I live at the bottom of Blair Road on 6 acres that were carved out of the Galusha farm many years ago. Probably 4 of those acres are woods. The other 2 are lawn and meadow, more meadow than a long time ago. I'm slowly turning some of the lawn into meadow. And I'm here just to learn how to be a good steward of this land and take care of it appropriately.
Wonderful. All right, thank you. Juliet, we'll give you an opportunity, but if you don't feel like it, we'll just move on. All right. All right. Avril, I thought we would start by talking about what is the landscape? What are we even talking about? Generally, what are the components of the landscape here in Williamstown and the environs? And then shift, I'll just quickly go through then shift to what are some of the stewardship objectives that we all might have about managing or stewarding the land. And then finally, we'll talk briefly just about what are some options, what are some opportunities for actually doing stewardship and engaging it formally. So if you wanted,
Yeah.
to kick off.
I guess purchasing, if I was gonna rewind 40 years or so and I was given the opportunity to buy or be given the land I lived on, it would be an overwhelming endeavor. Fortunately, I had a background of growing up there, so we played in the woods and we worked in the woods and whatever. But for somebody that has come here and purchased land and really not been familiar with that kind of environment, I think takes some time for somebody to get comfortable with what they have, walking through the woods, whether they, for me, it was an economic, some of my objectives were economic, other people's objectives aren't economic. You got land stewardship around forestry, and that's one aspect, one land stewardship around developing habitat for wildlife, birds, things like that. Those are all very honorable and exciting possibilities. And there are tools and people that we can connect you with, Rural Lands can connect you with, that can give you to start out some examples of what people have done. And I think that's probably the best approach to share with people what people have done. For me, personally, I can share with people physically on a tour or whatever, what I've done, and I'm excited about it. And I think that others that aren't so passionate about growing trees or making habitat for birds or wildlife, whatever, they can be one and the same, but there's a swing of the pendulum that people can find their comfort level with. And as Robin said, we can connect. There's programs in the state that can facilitate your knowledge and support of those programs. Forest for the Birds. Yeah, there's many programs now that are very comprehensive and supportive financially, and but I think the first thing is to go and see some of these examples of what people have done to give people a firsthand look at what they're doing to accomplish those goals.
Mhm.
So if that's
Yeah, good,
Okay,
good
yeah,
start. And I
okay.
think the first thing is to go know your land, right? So
right.
we're really promoting this idea that you go out and invite one of us.
Walk the land,
Walk
and yeah,
the land.
identify things that maybe you wouldn't notice if you were a new landowner. Different species, different invasive species. What's an invasive species? Well,
Ask you.
So, what the heck does that mean? Why is our invasive species a problem? Are they a problem in certain aspects? I can show you examples in my forest where I welcome invasive species because the regeneration that crops up underneath the invasive species are very prolific, and that's what I'm managing. And the invasive species are almost a mulch for the saplings and new generation of trees. So there's all kinds of things that we can share with you verbally and as an example for a field trip.
Mhm.
So
I've heard in this group, you've mentioned springs and a little bit of wetland. It sounds like most people have some forest on their property and meadow and fields.
It's wide open. I didn't have to cut down any trees. I don't ever have to rake any leaves. No trees. I have pine trees that I put in, maybe 20. But just to block the neighbor.
Okay, so
That's it.
so you would be managing the landscape that you know and would want to manage, Jerry, would be hay,
It's hayfield.
hayfield, yeah. And, but a lot of forest land. Avro mentioned, species, so it's very important to know what, if you have any, well, invasives, yes, but also rare species or birds, which may be in your hayfield, or plants, which may be in your wetland. Maybe you have some orchids there or something. So getting out with somebody to identify what you have, and not just the plants, which is what I'm interested in, but the birds and the amphibians and who knows.
Yeah, and it's also important to understand certain species of trees like a south-facing slope, oaks like a dry site, maples like a rich soil, bottomland species, basswood and cottonwood that you mentioned, willow, basically. Those are trees and species that are suitable for certain sites. So you want to manage around those species, not against those species, and promote those species regeneration. But there's other alternatives where you can introduce a like species that likes those habitats to grow. For instance, my stepfather years ago, back in the 50s, planted a stand of larch trees at Cricket Creek Farm, and they're very prolific and they did very well in this area. It was a very limestone rich soil. He also built a pond up there, and the pond disappeared after a couple of years because the limestone soil was so impervious, it just kind of disappeared out of sight. But you can see the stand of larches up there, and that's what I'm talking about, of identifying a type of tree that was suitable for a wet area. And you can introduce those things in many things, and the larches attract certain types of wildlife that are, respectful of that region.
Yes,
Is there a time jump in? with
jump
something?
in, please,
Okay.
everybody, please.
Yeah.
So you two have lived here for a long time, and I'm interested in knowing about what you've seen change in the last 20 years, and the extent to which, when you think about stewardship, are you imagining what do you need to be doing to your land this year, but also thinking that 20 years from now, we might be in a really different climate, and the plants and animals that we're seeing now might not be here in 20 years, and maybe the ones we're seeing today weren't here 20 years ago.
Well, I don't think too much. I don't think too much about it. I mean, my land is very simple. And it's very easy to take care of. I have a lot of my own equipment, but it's really old. So maintenance, just to take care of the equipment, to be able to do that is expensive, and I'm kind of losing interest. So I'm kind of turning it over to Jay, and he's a little older than my sons, but he's a very clever guy.
Ah,
Yeah, so, and he lives right just down the road a little bit, so
mhm.
he's sort of taken over. But, it's
And has
fun.
your experience of that land, is it different now than when you first started hanging?
Yeah, fertilization, I haven't done much for that,
Mm.
but I'm hoping Jay will, bring some, spread manure and stuff like that and upgrade it, because it's kind of dwindling. We used to get like 600 or 700 bales a hay off this, and now it's probably, I don't know, pushing it would be 300, 250.
Wow.
And it's the regular old bales, not the big round ones.
Mhm.
He does the round now, he's only done it last year, so he used these big round things. But as far as the change. In the house, my house is probably the smallest along that road. Most of them are, like $1 million and up. And beautiful big things, with everybody has, I think the lowest one since they'll find a lot that's sold. It's probably 3.5 acres. So everybody's got pretty much. And it's still really homey, it's still low key. I think it's a real neighborhood, but I'm a little more farmy farther down the road, the dirt stuff.
Jerry, have you looked into, you mentioned soil quality is declining, right?
Yeah.
Productivity. Have you looked into regenerative agriculture?
I have not.
Okay.
That's why I'm.
That's great, okay. It would be really interesting to maybe consider making a demonstration of your
Yeah,
hayfield to
Yeah.
do regenerative agriculture,
yeah.
which we can talk about
I
another time.
think
But
there's a lot of farmers that have helped me, that lived off on Henderson and they used to, the Gross family.
Yeah.
And he's in rough shape.
Yep.
But they knew what they were doing. I just followed
Yeah, I think one of the things that is your question about longevity and things like that. Years ago, when I was growing up, the Mass Department of Agriculture had this vision of hedges, living hedges, living fences, and they imported what was then and still now is multiflora rose or a living hedge, and the crafters of this initiative felt that New England was going to be much like England in its palatial pastoral makeup of hedges and things like that. And England is a place where they have a whole industry that manages these hedges. But the government or the state ag group gave my mother, who was a farmer, and many other farmers, my neighbor Bernardi's and other people. And this is a species that has taken over and is one of the biggest invasive species that farmers in this region and others have had to manage, myself included. And if you talk to any farmer in Williamstown, they will go, oh yeah, well, multiflora rose. Anyway, so, one of the approaches I've taken was, it's on a hedgerow and I make a hedge out of it. So let's be a little bit British for a while, and it's worked out well for me. It's still invasive and you have to manage it in the fields and clip it and do that. But that's one example, like kudzu in the southeast. I don't know that was has a similar story. I think the government ag people brought it in to do accomplish some end, and it took over. And but those are some of the inherent challenges we have. That's one of them. I mean, Dan can probably talk to you about barberry and other things, but I don't know where barberry came from, but I know multiflora rose.
Barberry.
Yeah. Anyway, so those are some of the things you inherit when you buy land here, whether you want it or not, it's there. And so you have to manage it. And there's different approaches. As I said earlier, I have barberry in abundance in areas, but the sugar maple saplings are very happy in those environments, and I don't know why, because I have colleagues in the industry that are going, wow, well, what are you doing? And I said, I'm not doing anything. So anyway, so it's kind of fun to see these variances and challenges.
I'm also interested in some of the, I mean, we don't have like a brownfield situation here where there's been a lot of urbanization that's been embedded. I mean, very different from towns and cities, but we still do have lots of remnants of prior work in the countryside. At my place, at the bottom of the property, there's a pond that was dug and has a some kind of edge to it, maybe, but you can hardly say that it's a ponding. But it's habitat for we have snapping turtles come out of there every year, and scattered through the landscape there are bits of construction, there are trash sites, there's so I'm really interested in kind of ways to work with that type of stuff as we find it around town as well. I mean, even if I go up to Mountain Meadow, and if you go up on the trails there up to Moss's camp, by the edge of the camp, there's an old trash site, and you can see there's tons of glass and all sorts. I mean, this stuff obviously stays around, even if it's 100 years old.
I have a similar situation.
Who's responsible for that?
Well, in that case, it's on the trustee's land.
Oh, it is.
But it's an old trash site. I mean, yeah, it's
But you can get rid of it.
At the landowner's expense,
yeah. I mean, it's hard work. You got to take a truck up there and a gang of people and dig this stuff out of the ground if you want to remediate it.
Is it accessible? Can
Oh,
you
yeah.
put an excavator in there?
you have an
Who knows?
excavator?
I don't, but my son does.
Yeah. I'm just interested in like all of these things. Yeah, this is land with history, right? And the
Absolutely.
historical uses of this land are really impactful,
Yeah.
whether it's construction or whether it's gravel pit. So I mean, and all of that.
Or if it's an old field that's come back in. I mean,
Yeah.
the pines are maybe indicative of old field
Mm.
succession, perhaps, unless they were
I think my pines were planted most.
planted.
I think thinking about longevity in general, and then the human impact that you're describing. When I think about the landscape here, it sort of seems like the places that need the most stewardship are the ones that were disturbed by humans in the past 150 years or so. If it's farmland that's reverting to forest, which is really unhealthy because it's not, it didn't develop as a diverse landscape, or if it's really sterile suburban lawns like mine, or these trash sites in the middle of the forest. I don't know, it just seems like over time, when I've been in really healthy forest, it's like the really old untouched stuff up on Greylock, or even the up in the Taconics around Pine Cobble, the areas that were just never cut by white settlers in the first place, and have just sort of been the way they are. When I think about invasive species and that kind of thing, that always disturbed sites where invasive species have been able to creep in.
Yeah, you want to know, you would like to probably find out why your property, why the habitat is as it is on your property. So, what is the history of your hayfield? Or why is this marsh there? Was it always there? Or I don't know, Janice, if you have remnants of something of old farming or forestry or something. Is there anything indicating on your property that indicates an interesting land use or terrible land use?
Yeah, I don't know I don't know if the field was ever used. I actually don't know. I know there was a house on the property that was torn down. And I don't know that the woods was ever, I just don't know.
you can discover it by going out and looking at the species and looking for trash. Looking at the structure of the forest, or look for stone walls, look for indicators of land use.
Yeah, actually, interesting, comment on that, topic. Adjacent to my property was the Carmelite Fathers, who was a Catholic church retreat. And they had a dump between the, I don't know, the monastery or whatever, and me, and they dumped all kinds of things between my property and theirs. And when I was in college, I worked for the soil testing lab at University of Vermont. And we did I took a crew down there for 3 days, and we did all kinds of soil tests in there. And the soils that were tested in that area where they were high in iron because they were disposed of old chairs that came from the the monastery or the church or whatever. And we kind of determined that we ought to just let them rot over time. And it's a very nice loam soil in there that grows a lot of nice trees, and they're very happy. And since then I've cut timber in there for probably the last 40, maybe even 50 years, and they still coming back very strong and happy because all those nutrients that were part of that dump, probably not all of the nutrients, but the ones that are growing trees and the trees are happy with, are doing well. Now, that's not the case for all dumps, but this one in particular, because when I was growing up, we used to take our bottles and cans and dump them in the backfield. And then we used to incinerate all our paper and garbage. Actually, we had pigs then, so the garbage went to the pigs, but we incinerated. We had a Sears and Roebuck incinerator in the basement. We burned all our trash. It was a common thing back then. So that's an example of maybe the dump isn't so bad in some cases. So
Yeah, that's interesting. Sarah, you have joined us since we began. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us why you're joining and how much acreage do you have? Why you're joining us?
Sure. I grew up in Williamstown on a plot of 50 acres, but have since moved to Stamford, Vermont. We have 25 acres, and I'm just curious to know more about the land and how to manage it properly. And we have, our green space around the home and gardens and some fruit trees. But I always try to keep up with what the Rural Lands is doing and see what we can do as homeowners and managers to make sure that we're doing the right thing. I'd also like to know more about the history of our land. I should probably get down to the Stamford Historical Society here, such as it is, and find out more about our plot. But there are also 2 homes behind us now for sale with quite a bit of acreage. So I'm curious about this whole area and how it originated up on Sumner Road in Stamford, Vermont. And how to properly manage. Yeah.
All right, well, welcome.
Thank you. Sorry, I was late.
Sorry, no worries at all. Listen, I will say we'll just go till 8 or a little after 8.
okay.
But I wanted to, and we have about 15, a little bit more minutes left. I want to say a couple things about land stewardship. One is, you got to think about what have you got, right? And including, you mentioned soils a lot, including, what is the substrate that your plants are growing on, and what is the connectivity? Where is your land in relation to other places? Is it uphill, downhill from a dump or from another stream? Does it connect? Is your property part of a corridor for wildlife or for invasives or anything? So looking at the context of your land, and Sarah, you mentioned properties nearby are for sale. So look at sort of the larger context of where your land is, what's on your property, and then get into, well, what's my goal here? You know, what do I care about? And or basically, what are my management objectives? You know, are you managing for recreation? Do you want to put ski trails and make a wonderful ski experience for people? Do you want to grow hay? Are you a bird fanatic or a wildlife habitat fanatic? Is that what you are managing for? And do you love growing trees for lumber, or do you love promoting the wild leeks or the ramps in your place? Are there wild, sorry?
Native species.
Native species and forage species. So you really want to think about what you're managing for. If it's for timber production, you might do one set of things, but you know what? Birds love timber stands as well. So, you know, April and I were talking, and of course, any management action, whether you're pruning your saplings or removing invasives, will have an impact on more broadly on the land, and it could meet two goals. You know, if you take out the multiflora rows, the skiers going through your property won't tear their ski clothes, and it's leaving space for the sugar maples to come out. So any management, you know, you can have a broad objective, but you can have multiple, you know, there are multiple outcomes to whatever you do. So think about, you know, what it is that you want your property to serve. Is it, you know, even, are you interested in carbon? You know, capturing carbon and getting paid credits for your carbon. Well, if you are, then join us on January 10th for our next talk, which is about the Family Forestry Carbon Initiative or Carbon Program.
And I guess the only thing I would add to what Robin's saying is, don't be in a hurry. It's you know, you have to have patience, because nature doesn't move as fast as humans do, and so and it's fun to kind of take a different pace. You know, like when I was coming in tonight, I told Dan that I heard a big flock of Canadian geese going south, and I think they missed the boat. They were a little bit late.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, but just enjoy your property for what it is, and don't be in a hurry to you know, make changes. Just kind of take your time and look at what other people are doing and talk to other people, and have fun doing this, because it is a fun time, and it can be a very rewarding experience.
Yes. Manual invasive species removal, for example, is a wonderful. One land manager I knew said, "This is my anger management activity." You just go through. So, and you could get a lot of multiflora rows out of with that therapeutic in that.
What happens to this stuff that they're taking out? Are they putting it into big piles and burning it, or what?
I don't know.
I do when I do it, yeah.
You burn?
Oh, yeah, definitely. But you know what? If you don't kill it, it's gonna come back in the vengeance the next year. So it's a persistent task. So, because on my fences, you know, my one wire fence for the cattle, it comes in. So
Yeah.
if I had goats, the goats would eat it, but I don't have goats, so anyway.
I noticed there are a couple of resources to help you to sort of provide frameworks and help you think about managing your land. And there's several of them are on the DCR, Department of Conservation and Recreation website. They have a program called the Forest Stewardship Program. And there are a couple of resources there for planning and thinking about what your objectives are. And planning your management strategies or your stewardship strategies. They encourage you, if you're going to do anything that's going to cost and you'd like a grant for it, for example, or timber or forest timber management or forestry for the birds or even invasives removal or control. No, we never control them. What is it? What do you say when we're approaching invasives? Attempting to control invasives. Anyway, if you want state funds, you will have to do a forest management plan or a forest stewardship plan. And it's a wonderful process. Then we did a couple. You want to say anything about what that was like? Sort of where that got you in your thinking?
Yeah, it was a wonderful process. We hired a forester last year to do four separate parcels for us. And so we met with the forester ahead of time and told them what we were interested in managing for, kind of like Robin touched on. For us, it was health of the forest, fostering plants and animals and just, kind of all the naturey nice things that you would imagine a land trust would manage for. There's some recreation thrown in as well. And so then what the foresters do is they go out on their own time and they walk through the land really systematically and look at the health of all the trees. They look at what's there, and they make a map of what is actually on the landscape from the herb layer on up to the tree layer. And they look at things like how healthy they are, how dense the tree stands are. They look at the age of everything. And so they get a really comprehensive picture of the property. And then based on what you have asked them, what you have told them you want to manage for, they make recommendations for the next 10 or 15 years about, okay, these are some activities that you could do in this little 5-acre piece, in this 10-acre section. And so you end up with a suite of options for the whole property that kind of help you compartmentalize how you might manage a big piece of land or a small piece of land, but it's sort of it's a really neat 30 or 40 page document at the end that tells you what's there, how it's doing, and then how you can improve it. And we use state funding too to help pay for those. And if any of you are interested in that, I'm happy to meet with you and tell you who we worked with, how it worked, that kind of thing.
It's got to be developed by a forester, right?
Yeah, the state.
If you want funding.
Yeah, the state has a list of approved foresters. And it's like anything, like if you're getting house work done, you bid out the project, and so you contact a few foresters and they could give you references and prices and that kind of thing. But then once you hire them, it's you don't have to do much until they hand you the document. And they'll walk through with you too at the end and kind of give you a tour as well.
One of the interesting things about the land that's developed where my house is, the land didn't perk. So Phil Grandy had all these lots, and when he surveyed them out and stuff like that, nothing perfect. So he and Billy Hart put in a sewer.
Oh my God, just a
Just the
local
two of them.
sewer.
That's the two of them. We're all the way into it, connected in, where the pavement is on Stratton Road.
Wow.
And that was 1978,
Awesome.
and it's been working great.
Oh my gosh.
But if anything goes wrong with it, the town will not take care of it.
Of course.
So actually, Bill Grandy is still responsible to come and fix it.
I'll be there.
Oh, that is funny.
It's in the deed. You can only have one house, even though if you had, I think like Rich Genova had 12 acres, you still can only put one house on.
Because it doesn't hurt. Yeah, interesting. Yes, Forest Stewardship Program website is quite a good place to go to look for resources. They have something called, I think they have a series called Caring for Your Land, which has a booklet on looking at your objectives. They seem to be really forest management, timber management, timber production focused, but
Do you have an email for that?
well.
I mean, I'll get it later.
Yeah, I can send out on a little email, several of these websites.
What resource would you recommend for people who don't have forested land? Like Jerry has fields.
Yeah,
Like does NRCS do things with private landowners, or are there any other Massachusetts organization that you know of?
well, the American Farmland Trust, they're all about farmland conservation. they might.
And there's examples of regenerative, you talked about regenerative. So we could, you know, bring you to those examples of regenerative agriculture and things like that, that would give you examples of what's being done. Not that it may not apply to your situation, but, you know, there could be some exercises, minimal exercises that would help stimulate the soil.
Yep. Come talk to us. I think really come talk to us and we can guide you to the right agencies or individuals. And, you know, I will say Dana is a naturalist and she might love to go out on your property with you and to discover the exciting habitats and species, perhaps, and plants and animals.
She's a rock star. I'm all for that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's
I
awesome.
think, I think also if on a very similar note, if you're not interested in like engaging with the state agency or
Yeah.
something like that, we're happy to come by and be like, okay, this is what you have, generally speaking, and here's some tips. It wouldn't be as comprehensive as what a forester could do, but we can certainly give you recommendations for how to get started and keep busy.
Yeah, like Dana's lined up an invasive species expert from this, who's coming, and let's go, you know, I hope we can have a field component. Let's go do it, you know, and get your hands dirty. So yeah, there's lots you can do by yourself. I love imagining you going and pruning individual little baby trees. So you'll get a nice,
It's a tedious
not
exercise.
free.
When you come back a couple years later, you go, oh my God, I did something.
Yes.
I made an impact.
Well, it does take a long
Oh,
time,
yeah.
but you do see
Yeah,
results.
yeah.
You thin a stand, you see the
Yeah.
other trees filling in that open space in the canopy.
That's my inspiration to do more. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Carolyn, Sarah, Janice, do you have any comments or questions before we close out?
I've been on one of the edible walks that the Wild Soul River has sponsored. We went up to the Broadbrook Trail, which is where my old neighborhood was, and it was just really educational and inspirational to get out there and see that there's so much wild edible food right in everybody's backyard. And I think they did another one at the Clark Art, which I was unfortunately I had to miss, but I love that they're doing that. And I think the more that you're right, we get out into each other's properties and really explore and see the multi-uses, the better. And with kids, we got to get kids out there, you know, educate them to take care of our earth in so many ways. But I love and appreciate this series that you've started.
Yeah, we had a watercress salad tonight, and watercress in my brook is very prolific, and it will be until it goes below zero.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah. What else? Did I have anything finally to say? Does anybody have anything finally to say?
What's the next? What's the first
Yeah,
stop?
what's the first schedule?
The first,
Invasive species,
the
right?
first formal one is actually on January 10th. And it's going to be again about the Family Forestry Carbon Program.
Ah, nice.
And there's a pre-recorded video or show presentation by the Nature Conservancy and the
American Forestry Foundation.
Thank you, American Forestry Foundation. And they're pairing up with this program to work with private landowners to explore whether
Nice.
or how you might engage in the carbon space,
Awesome.
selling carbon credits. And so there's this pre-recorded thing that we'll pass out, and then there will be a question and answer with the TNC, with the people. We're really excited about it. It's a really complicated space, this carbon business, but it's worthwhile to get a sense of what's going on out there. Definitely before I just attended a seminar today about it, and it's a mess, but it's interesting.
But I will say that for the audience that has participated in this, Dan, Robin and Dana and myself as well are welcome to anybody to visit or ask questions or whatever. Because we, as you know, are passionate about this and want you to learn as much as we can provide. So.
And off of that as well, we have a couple of talks that are either scheduled or or in talks with, booking people, I guess, to give talks. But if you have a topic that's of particular interest to you, let us know and we'll see who we can find to cover that topic and, get the information to you. So please reach out to us as well.
Nice.
Yeah. Hey, thank you all for coming. This is a good group. And I hope you'll talk amongst yourselves and invite your neighbors. Let's keep talking
Sure.
and site visit. Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
thanks so much, Dan.
Yep.
Sarah.
Yeah.
Everybody.